Welcome to a new episode of Delphine's Circle, where we uncover the mind, body, and spirit of success. Subscribe now for free to receive updates on the latest interviews. Then, sit back, relax, and tune in. Hi, Stephen. Welcome to the Circle.
Hi, Delphine. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. So, Stephen Bonnell, you're an online Twitch streamer, political commentator, and YouTube personality.
Yep.
But I got to tell you, I mean, it's probably not a surprise up until like maybe this past year. I had no idea what a Twitch streamer was. And when I was telling my friends you were coming on, they're like, what? Who? What is a Twitch streamer? What is... So for the sake of our audience, please tell us what the heck you do.
I have varying levels of how I answer that question based on the level of expertise of the person asking. But the way I would describe it is basically, if you've ever seen like YouTube, it's like that. It's just live, basically. Yeah.
Okay,
so I'll play video games. I'll chat about different topics, current events or whatever. We do interviews, we do panels, we do, just a variety of stuff. Whatever a person can do on a computer, basically, except in front of an audience.
Well, it's funny because I actually went on and I was looking at a bunch of things, and it seemed so much broader than what I originally thought. I thought it was just basically a gaming platform, and that's all anybody did. But there's a lot. I mean, it was my son Eris who introduced me to you or told me about you. Well, I've been hearing your voice around my house for years.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Shut up!
Yeah.
But he said, Mom, I think he would make for a great interview. So I actually looked into a little bit more. But of course, it was his girlfriend, Tulu, that actually, because that's women get shit done, I'm saying, who reached out to you, and you were gracious enough to come on. So in reading up about it, though, you are one of the originators. I mean, Wikipedia calls you a pioneer in the industry. So
yeah, I think I was the first one to actually quit my job and do streaming full-time as a profession. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. So what got you to do that? What made you think that this is the thing for you?
I've always been I would like to think I've always been a pretty funny person, and I've always played video games. And outside my high school, outside of like one of the classrooms or sometimes a band room, we would just set up like a TV at a PlayStation, and we would just play games with each other. And I think we all had a fun time doing it. Several years later, I had a friend show me that like, hey, there's this weird kind of stuff online where people can broadcast their computer stuff and then talk about what's going on, and maybe it'd be funny to like do something like that. I was like, I was basically translating that real life experience into kind of like an online format. And I started doing it, and it just slowly kind of ramped up over time. And yeah.
How has been the response? I mean, when you got started, how long did it take before it really started taking off and you're like, wait a minute, this is really something?
Oh man, you're testing my timelines a lot here. So I think sometime in early 2010, early mid 2010, basically I was working full time as a contracted carpet cleaner, which is a horrible job. And yeah, oh my goodness.
We appreciate you carpet cleaners. Don't let them talk down to it.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking down. It's hard work. It just doesn't pay very well.
Yeah.
Or at least I didn't know how to make it pay well at the time. But basically, in all of my free time, so sometimes between jobs or sometimes at the end of the day, I would just stream a little bit. And as part of streaming in the early days, sometimes we'd give like a PayPal, and if you want to donate to keep the stream on or whatever, you can throw $5 or $10 or whatever.
So were you teaching people how to game on the stream, or what was the point of it? Why would people watch you?
Well, because I'm funny. What do you mean?
Oh, okay.
Well, that's a very offensive question. Why do people watch you? What do you mean?
So it's an entertainment. Well, I'm just trying to understand why people
There's a variety of reasons. So way early on, my focus was gaming, and I was really good at the game that I played. So people watched me for two reasons. One was because maybe they could learn things because I'm decent at explaining things. And then two was because I come from a very, we'll say, toxic internet background. So it was funny to watch me associate with the other people online in ways that I wouldn't be able to do today. But it was a very aggressive, very hard-headed, very like a lot of trash talking and everything. So it was funny to watch me, and then people could learn at the same time. And then I would interact with chat. So it felt like you were getting like a one-to-one interaction, they kind of too, as I played. And yeah, it just kind of like took off from there.
Love it. Because I do know that you guys do like competitions or have some sort of...
like playoffs.
And there's some rivalries there too, right?
For sure.
Are they real?
Absolutely. Absolutely real. Oh yeah. There would be times where you would queue up against a guy, and you would be playing harder than you would play at a tournament, because you knew that if this guy beat you, he would like take the game and put it on like his YouTube channel, and everybody would make fun of you for it. So it was like, yeah, it was pretty extreme back then. Yeah.
Okay, so are you really just the super rock star gamer, or how does your gaming rate with other professional gamers?
These days, not as well. So back then, I think I was pretty good for the North American region.
And what was your game?
StarCraft 2. But there was
My
kind
son
of...
played StarCraft 2.
Well, that's good. StarCraft 2 or StarCraft 2?
Oh, 2.
Okay, good. That's good. But yeah, I mean, there was kind of a choice you had to make way back in the day. And it was whether you wanted to be like a professional gamer or more like an entertainer streamer. And the money was in like the tournaments and everything. And it's where most people focus. But I saw more stability in the streaming side of things. I already had a child, I had a house, I had bills to pay. It wasn't just like, this is all fun and games. And I couldn't risk, like, if I do bad at tournaments for 2 or 3 months, I'd miss my mortgage. So I always kind of opted to focus on the streaming side of things.
How do you make money on streaming?
Today, well, I mean, there's a lot of ways. It depends.
Okay.
So you can run advertisements on your channel, like pushing like an ad button that will draw from a big inventory of ads, kind of like on YouTube. Sometimes people will sponsor you. So a company might say, we'll give you X dollars a month to promote our product, maybe in the form of a banner, or maybe to use it and have it on stream so people can see it, like headphones. People can donate money to you directly, maybe to have like a funny message pop up on stream or something. You can sell merchandise. I think I have like a sweatshirt back here with my little logo on it.
Is that for me?
Absolutely not.
Darn it. I almost got some. So do you make a good living doing this?
Better than anything, yeah, that was within my grasp, yeah, for sure.
Wow,
yeah.
That's awesome. Can you show me how to do it?
Well, you're halfway there now, right?
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's help a girl out. So tell me, is Twitch like the largest e-gaming platform, or is it turned more into more like lifestyle stuff?
I think the 3 that are vying for the top spot right now are YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. I think culture-wise, yeah.
Really?
Facebook has tried to break into the gaming space, although they're having more trouble doing it. YouTube owns the gaming space in terms of like videos. Like if you want to go watch videos about gaming, you're going on YouTube. But for live streaming, I think Twitch is still at the top, although Twitch has expanded pretty significantly to non-just gaming content. Yeah.
So let's say I'm going to go on. Do I pick like a game I want to watch, or how does people normally get, introduced to what you guys do?
It super depends. There's a lot of different potential vectors, I guess. Sometimes it might be somebody's doing something funny, so you link a friend to stream,
Okay.
and then you start watching a streamer that way. You might find a streamer through YouTube, because a lot of streamers upload their stuff on YouTube. So a lot of people might watch me on YouTube, and then they'll hop over and they'll try to check out a stream. Other times, maybe you're on Twitch already because you watch a certain streamer or a certain game, so you can branch out from there. It just kind of depends. It's kind of like YouTube. Like, how do you get into YouTube? It just depends on what you get linked or where you come from.
Right. Does most of your audience come to you for gaming? Because you also do lots of other stuff, and you're actually known now for being a political commentator or commentary person. And those two, when Eris was telling me about it, I was like, how do those two relate? How do you talk about politics while you're gaming? So do you think more people are coming to you for the gaming or for the political commentary?
Prior to 2016, it was definitely for the gaming. And then around 2016 and then onward, it started to shift more towards kind of political or current events commentary.
What made you decide to get started with that?
So I've never really believed much in like specialization as humans in your whole life. So like there's archetypes of like you're either a jock or you're a nerd or you're like a musician or whatever. I think a lot of people can have a lot of interest over a wide variety of topics. So even when I played games back in the early days, 2010, 2011, 2012, I'd still like talk about current events or whatever topics were big in like science or philosophy or whatever we were arguing about on stream. It would just depend. And then when 2016 happened, I noticed that when Trump started talking a lot, when people started responding to things he was saying, the conversations were very, very, very low quality. There wasn't a lot of like factual foundation for what people were arguing. And I would get kind of frustrated because I'd be like, these two people are totally not connecting on this topic at all. Maybe if I have some of these conversations, I can like contribute positively to the overall discourse. So.
I like that.
Well, it ended up with me just screaming into the abyss. But the start was of noble intent. So,
yeah. Well, I think that from what I understand, you have brought a lot of really good discussions of things that maybe a lot of people haven't talked about or haven't thought about, especially for the younger generation. What is the demographic of your viewership, do you think?
If I had to guess across all platforms, it's probably like 85 to 90% male, probably majority is like 18 to like 24. Maybe it probably skews a bit older, probably like 22 to 26 more, because I do the political stuff. My audience will skew a bit older, and because I've been streaming so long. So
yeah. Well, hopefully after 26 they have a job.
Well, yeah.
Just saying.
For sure.
Just saying.
Do you know a 26-year-old that needs a job?
Well, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to talk about it on the show.
Gotcha.
So what is your average audience reach? The average show?
It's really hard to measure that because different metrics mean so much differently. So on YouTube, I think I'm averaging around like 7.5 million views a month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So then on each video, hopefully they're getting anywhere from 100 to 200,000 views. On a live stream for like a live viewership, like how many people watching at once, it's anywhere from like, if I'm doing something interesting, probably around 10,000 live viewers. And then there's other social media platforms, Twitter and Instagram, but it's harder to measure. Yeah, because the viewership means different things on different platforms. Like 100,000 views on a YouTube video is pretty good, but 10,000 live viewers is way better than 100,000 like passive views on a video. So it's kind of hard to measure it all.
Right. And does Twitch provide all those metrics for you? Are they good at helping to track where your audience is coming from, when there's viewing, all of that?
Yeah, pretty decent, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Okay, got to teach me, man.
Yeah,
I want 10,000 people watching me.
There are ways. It depends on how much integrity you're willing to sacrifice, but there are definitely ways to do it. There's a path forward there. Yeah.
There you go. Well, I told my son that you remind me of Howard Stern because of the, and obviously I've come from a different generation, but just the, you're so open with your conversation. It's so uncensored. And that's what I remember Howard Stern really kind of creating that. Eris tells me you remind him of Bill Maher. And he's a big Bill Maher fan. So that is definitely a compliment because he loves how you mix humor with politics. Who do you liken yourself to?
I've kind of had a strange upbringing. So I very much don't have like people that I model myself after. I always kind of have like an internal vision of kind of what I want to be. And then I kind of like push towards that. So I don't really model myself after others. I've been likened to Howard Stern. Half the time it's a positive thing. Half the time people are saying it as an insult. So the positive ways are like, oh, you have a lot of open, challenging conversations and you're like kind of funny when you do it. And then other people say you're just like an edgy shock jock trying to say whatever vulgar stuff you can to be disgusting, which I guess is kind of what people said about Howard Stern at the time too, depending on what kind of person you are.
But from what I've seen from you, I don't think that matches you. I mean, I think
you just haven't seen the right video.
Oh.
I promise you.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you are a shock jock at some times.
Well, I try not to be, but
it
just depends on what I'm talking about, I guess. Yeah.
Depends on the mood that day.
Yeah, and who I'm talking to. Yeah.
So you say that you have kind of like a vision of what you want to go for. What is that vision?
When it comes to conversations, my goal is I want to be factually correct on everything I talk about. So I'm hoping that I'm coming from like a factual foundation when I address an issue and then when I give like a suggestion for an issue. So let's say we're talking about like housing problems in a city. I would hope that I have a decent understanding of like, well, what do economists think about like what's good for housing? And then what's the situation? And then like, what can we do to, rectify whatever problems there are? So having like a good factual foundation is important for me. And then the second thing is having a good level of understanding. I notice that this is missing in almost all conversations. People on the left are seen as like, they want to teach white people to hate themselves and, bend over backwards for minorities, blah, blah, blah. And then everybody on the right is like a fascist, dictator-loving, racist, horrible person. So
money grubbing.
Yeah, I kind of hope sometimes to bridge those worlds. That's why I like debating people are arguing, because it kind of forces people to confront somebody with a different set of ideas than your own.
Yeah. Well, how much time do you spend researching these topics before you talk about them on air?
It totally depends. Oftentimes sometimes there's little research because I've already debated the topic over and over again. But I would say like preliminary, if we're jumping into something pretty complicated, it can be anywhere from like, honestly, it can be anywhere from like 2 to like 48 hours of research. It really depends. Like on some topics, it's just a matter of like reading a couple studies or even the abstracts of the studies, and you're having a general idea of what's going on. For other more complicated topics, it might involve a lot more digging through, like what do different scholars say about a thing, or what articles have been written about a thing, or what is the history of an area. So it depends. So when I'm having conversations about like Middle Eastern stuff, there's like kind of a lot of digging you have to do in like the history and then the different groups involved in all the conflicts. So that might be very difficult. But if there's a conversation about something related to like the coronavirus or vaccines, that might be simply like, well, what has the CDC said about something, or what is like the latest research say about something? So it might be easier for that.
When would you have time to do any of that? I mean, you're on air for what, like 8 to 10 hours a day, right?
Well, there's one is my life is work. So I work all the time. So usually I'm reading stuff related to stream before stream and after stream if I'm interested in it. And then the second thing is oftentimes I can do a lot of it on stream. So those will be more boring streams, but sometimes we'll have like research streams where I'm just like, okay, well, we're going to read for 8 hours about this particular topic and see what's going on with it. So.
Using your time wisely.
Yeah.
So where do you get your news?
That's a really... I answer this in the most insulting way possible. I think that it's really easy to get good news. I think that most people just are too lazy to do it. The thing that I say is if you're willing to read a full article from top to bottom, you're going to be more informed than basically everybody on a given topic because people only read the headlines.
Or if you're just willing to read your news as opposed to get it from broadcast television.
Sure, potentially, yeah. So like any of like the major media companies will get things like mostly right. Like even Fox News reporting will get things mostly right. So like Fox News reporting, CNN, on the ground reporting for stuff like AP and Reuters is always going to be really good in terms of factual basis. For foreign news, I mean like the BBC, Al Jazeera, like these all do like a decent job. It's just good to be aware, I guess, of different biases. But I mean, it's going to depend on what topic you're reading about versus what's being reported. But if you just read an article from top to bottom and you have like a good understanding, like very rarely will somebody publish a lie. Like that's incredibly rare. Even on like on the right, like even on CNN, they're not just going to publish blatant lies. Or even on Fox News, they're not just going to publish blatant lies. Usually, they're just going to be like a bit of a slant in terms of how it's reported. Yeah, kind of. Or yeah, it's hard to point out, but like somebody might say something like, they might publish a negative article about Trump saying Trump already golfed 3 times in his first year of presidency or something. And it's like, wow, that's really horrible. But maybe if you look it up, like historically, the average amount of golfing trips a president takes in their first year is 2 times. So he's a little bit over, or maybe it's 4 times and he's even less, So oftentimes like
it actually was a lot.
I think it was lying, but I was using that as an example. But I'm just saying, like a lot of times the bias is not like they're just lying completely, but it might just be like the way something is phrased might be a little bit off. Yeah,
that makes sense. I know of at least one instance where your political commentary turned to activism. You led a canvassing operation with you and your viewers in support of a Democratic candidate, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, in the Georgia Senate runoff. My son was over the moon, excited about that because it really seemed to make an impact. Can you tell us a little bit about that story? Yeah,
so basically I do a lot of politics talk online and it's kind of, I'll say masturbatory. Like everybody gets online and they talk about politics and they feel really important and hurrah, hurrah, my team or whatever. But I would like to make a bit of more of an impact in real life. So I try to figure out like what are ways that I can gear my platform towards like actually effecting some type of real political change. I started to pull on random congressional candidates, smaller people that would be like, oh, I can give you a platform, I can interview you, maybe you get donations, maybe you raise awareness. And then I was trying to figure out like what is like the most like on the ground effective political action we can do. And I'd heard people talk about canvassing, and it's really hard to get people to show up for canvassing. So I went to Atlanta, Georgia. And I think I put out a tweet, and I think I mentioned it like a week or something in advance, like, hey, I'm going to be at a big park in Atlanta, Georgia. Like, if you think you'd be interested in signing up for canvassing, like, come by. And I was kind of hoping, I think if I got like 20 to 25 people, I think I would try to do something. And I was kind of like, my expectations were like maybe 10 or 15. I think we got around like 150 people to show up for that.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And and so I had like this huge like crowd of people that I, was like talking to about canvassing and everything. It was like, okay, well, if I can get this many people in real life to show up, if I could get even half, if I could get even a third of these people to go canvass every week, that would be amazing. Because like canvassers will struggle to fill like
so canvassing is going door to door.
Door to door, knocking on doors and So basically we did that it was either 4 or 5 weeks in a row. Every weekend I would fly out. We would bring canvassers. We would work kind of with groups working with the campaign in order to go knock on doors and raise awareness for the election and everything. And
Wonderful. You're really a good person, Stephen. Despite what everybody might say about you.
Yeah.
You said that you used to consider yourself a conservative, and now you've swung to the left. What do you attribute that to?
I grew up very Republican. My family, from my mom's side, all come from Cuba, who are very Republican, very conservative. And like growing up, if you ever hunt down like articles I wrote for the school newspaper, it was like defending the Iraq War and how Bush was a war hero. And I was a huge fan of like Michael Savage and Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh and these guys. I think as I went through high school, I gradually kind of moved from being religious to atheist. And then by the time I hit college, I was kind of like a libertarian. So I was a big Ron Paul supporter in 2008. And then I think what happened was once I got into streaming, um, as I collected more and more experiences, I kind of saw how unfair life was in some ways. And I think it kind of shaped me a little bit differently. Like if you would have talked to me as like a carpet cleaner or when I worked at the casino in a restaurant, or when I worked at McDonald's, I think I would always say like, hard work and everything will get you to where you need to be in life, et cetera, et cetera. And then once I became a streamer and I saw like, man, when you have money, everything in life becomes so much easier. And it is actually so unbelievably unfair, the differences in opportunities that I and then my child have versus like what a working class person will have. I think it shaped my experiences and how I view things a bit more.
So could you ever see yourself running for public office?
Absolutely not.
Damn it.
My past is way too checkered. I did a second canvassing effort in my city for a mayoral candidate, and it got really rough towards the end with a lot of like attack hit pieces on me, not even on the candidate.
Wow.
So I think, yeah, maybe in the future, but the money's not there for it because it would be a huge pay cut.
Right.
And then I just, in terms of what I excel at, like I'm really good at live conversation. I'm really good at arguing with people. I'm really good at the style of entertainment I do. It feels like even if I were to get elected to some office, it would be like a big misallocation of talents. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's sad because I think this younger generation, I don't think anybody is interested in public office.
Yeah, for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. We move around a lot more. So it's kind of hard to care sometimes, right? Like if you're just in a city
Yeah.
because you work there and then you're renting an apartment and you have a family, like do you really care what goes on in the local politics versus when you have a home, a family, you're stuck in an area. I say stuck, but like you're like kind of, nested down in an area. You're probably way more incentivized to have more of a care about what's going on locally.
Yeah. And I think that, there's everything so exposed now, right? And social media, and you just got to be ready to be able to take a lot of personal attacks. And I think most people just don't have the stomach for it.
Yeah, it's very inhuman to be on social media, I think. I think that's a totally fair thing. The way that we've evolved over time, I just don't think most like people are equipped to deal with incredibly personal negative attacks from potentially hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people online sometimes. It's a very difficult thing to deal with.
So let's talk a little bit about cancel culture.
Oh boy, okay.
As I understand it, Eris told me you got canceled from Twitter.
I've gotten canceled like 50 times from
Have
all
you?
sorts of things, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So why? What's going on? Why did Twitter do it? Put it that way.
So with Twitter, I fought with, there are people called race realists. So these are people that say that the division between human races is like a biological fact that can determine other traits about ourselves. So different people, different like white people versus black people versus Asian people might be more intelligent, more creative or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And these are like biologically rooted. And I got into an argument. I fight with these people a lot online. And I think I tweeted out a picture of like 3 or 4 of them. Because a lot of these people that will call themselves white nationalists or white supremacists are oftentimes mixed race, which I thought was really funny. So I think I tweeted out a picture of one and I said that I think the white ethno state is more diverse than a Disney Channel original movie. And I think for some reason, Twitter flagged that as inciting, I think, violence against racial groups. And that type of report gets your account permanently axed.
Wow.
So, yeah. Rip.
Oh, well. Sorry.
Yeah.
But what do you think about this? I mean, I just had a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist on, and Rick Reef, great guy. And he said, absolutely, there should be no censorship in what anybody says at any time. I asked him, I said, well, what about, inciting riots or that type of thing? And he said, no, you counteract bad speech with good speech, but you should never cut anybody. Do you believe that?
So when I think of issues like that, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I instantly would have said yes. So here's the thing that I try to be mindful of when I have these conversations. At the end of the day, nothing really affects somebody like me that much in the political system because I'm a white guy, I'm pretty wealthy, whatever happens, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So it's easy for me to say, we need to counter bad speech with good speech because, because I don't have anything at stake there. If I'm talking to like a woman in Texas who is on the verge of losing like access to her reproductive rights, and she sees the types of conversations going on, and she's like, okay, well, hey, all these people pushing for this thing is like detriment to my life. Or maybe a trans person that people are trying to outlaw them getting access to medication, or any other number of, you could say, at-risk groups that are impacted by the conversations. I'm really empathetic to them, saying, okay, well, hold on. To you, it's just speech, but to me, it could represent like some form of actual manifest harm in my life. That being said, I think we should be able to have more challenging conversations online. I think right now the line has moved way too far towards the just get rid of everybody that disagrees with kind of like the very corporate safe left-leaning message. But I am empathetic towards people that are like, well, this stuff does represent, like a real tangible harm to some groups of people.
That makes sense to me.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about the metaverse.
Okay.
Seems like there's everywhere you go now, people are talking about how this is going to kind of change our online experience. And when I think about a platform like Twitter, where it's very imagination driven anyway in terms of the gaming industry, what are your thoughts about how the metaverse coming in might have an impact on what you do?
Let me ask you, what is your impression of what the metaverse is? Because I've heard like 5 different explanations for how people perceive it.
That's a very good question, and I definitely don't
Mhm.
perceive to be an expert on it. But as I understand it, it's this kind of a 3D virtual reality that's going to be projected through an online experience, so
Mhm.
that you have this opportunity to be more kind of personally
Yeah, I've heard stuff like this.
involved.
Um,
What's your definition?
it's close enough, I think. Yeah.
Don't be a copier.
Don't be a copier. I mean, I've heard people say, have you ever heard of something called AR, alternate reality?
No.
So instead of like virtual reality, we have goggles and everything is like completely, in the goggles. Sometimes you can get like a pair of glasses that will project stuff, not project stuff, but it'll perceive stuff basically to kind of like modify or augment your existing reality. So maybe you put it up and you've got new posters on your wall or something. But more or less, it's like in line with what you said. Some people say fully 3D. I've heard other people say weird things about what the metaverse could be. I'm really lucky in that when I was born, uh, the internet wasn't really that big of a thing, or really that much of a thing at all yet. So I got a lot of real life before I became a permanent resident of the internet, which I would say that I am now. But something that I would say that sometimes younger people might miss, and even other millennials might miss, is online interactions were never supposed to be a substitution for real life interactions, and they're absolutely not the same thing. And no amount of online stuff can get you to the same level of interaction with another person face to face. So I always view these tools as like these were things that were supposed to augment our real life interactions. So like when Facebook came out, it gave you the chance to like register for parties or see what people were up to go hang out with people. But when they become substitutions for real life things, I think that's kind of scary. Probably not good for your mental health. Probably not good for your like physical, social well being. So
You won't be sitting in somebody's living room with them playing video games with them in the future?
I probably will be. But I recognize it as like this is a tool. This is something that can be fun to visit, but this isn't where you're supposed to live, I guess.
Yeah. I totally agree, and it's interesting because even when I started the podcast, obviously I want to interview people that live all over the place, and so many people said, "Well, can we just do it online? Can we do it Zoom? Can we do an interview?" And for me, I get so much more out of having the person sit across from me and just being able to, kind of respond to their nuances and their personality and the chemistry, and it's super important to me, and so I appreciate that somebody who makes his living on the internet does still distinguish between those two experiences.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I've been confronted with journalists sometimes with things I've said in the past, and when somebody's like reading something back to you, it comes across a lot different than when you're like in the middle of doing something. So I remember there was a journalist once who was trying to ask me questions about things I'd said in the past, and just reading down, like one of the things was like, so you were playing a video game against this other person. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, you said that you were going to kill him and his entire family. What did you mean by that? And I'm like, well, it's just a joke. We say that, but trying to explain it sounds really weird,
Yeah.
Whereas like if you hear a bunch of people writing like, oh, I'm going to kill you, it's a way different thing. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance that could be missed in text, and then any relationship where people are texting each other, they should realize that, where you can read things incorrectly, and then you'll miss. Sometimes even when you're on camera, you can miss stuff, and there's no substitute for real life experiences.
Yeah, I so agree. All right. Well, speaking of real life experiences, we do something here called the big questions. This is where we're going to do a deep dive to really get to uncover the inner workings of Stephen.
Okay.
And I call you Steven, but really when you're gaming, your name is Destiny.
I try to be Steven most of the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, most people I know call you Destiny.
Sure.
All right. So, Steven, do you have any consistent daily routines?
Yes. I used to be so horrible at this 5 or 6 years ago. I would probably go to sleep at around, I would say, probably 9 or 10 in the morning, and I would wake up at like 5 or 6 at night. The biggest routine,
we don't know anybody that does that.
Yeah, not good, not healthy. It's not a good thing to do. Not a good way to live your life. The most important thing I think I did was like getting my sleep schedule in order. So I'm waking up at the latest like 11 or 12 in the afternoon, and then trying to go to sleep anywhere from midnight to like 2 to 3 a.m., which maybe even that sounds extreme to some people, but it's a big improvement over going to sleep when the sun comes out.
Absolutely.
So I would say having a consistent sleep schedule is pretty important. Over the past like about 4 months ago, I started getting into working out, and that only matters if you do it consistently. The gym doesn't do much if you go once every 2 weeks or if you're kind of scattered.
What is it that made you decide to make these changes in your life?
The sleep thing was kind of health and kind of business. Nobody likes it if your stream is all over the place. They don't know when to schedule you into their time if you're streaming at totally different hours every time of the day. Also, if you're in a relationship, it's probably nice to go to sleep and wake up with your partner instead of they're coming out of the bedroom and you're going in. You're like, oh, see you later. Not a good thing.
Absolutely.
So the sleeping thing was big. The gym thing, for somebody in my position, I don't think there's an excuse to be super out of shape because I have the most flexible schedule in the world and I have as much free time as I want. So I made that change. Yeah.
Good for you. It's positive.
Yeah.
Who inspires you?
So I've said this before, for maybe I'm really narcissistic, but I tend to not have very many external motivators in terms of what I do. I'm a very internally driven person, which has kind of been uniquely helpful for me in doing the streaming stuff because you get a lot of negative external pressure. In terms of people that I actually look up to in the broader world, it's pretty rare to find somebody. There's a guy called Sean Carroll that I super love. He has a background in theoretical physics, which is cool because I like science, but he has a show called the Mindscape podcast. I don't know if I'm allowed to plug another podcast here.
Absolutely.
Sorry,
plug away.
But he does a lot of like social topics, philosophy, a lot of that type of stuff as well. I have a lot of respect for people that can do hard science stuff and then softer cultural, sociological, art-driven stuff because it feels like there's an artificial divide sometimes between those types of people, and I really don't like that. Where like a person that's an artist can't like math or science, or a person that's like an engineer can't like loser art stuff. I like it when these worlds collide in people.
I feel like that's coming down. I feel like that's becoming more and more the norm. I think you're right. I think in the beginning, people were very segmented. You're the jock, you're the geek, you're the whatever. But I feel like this newer generation hasn't really embraced that. And I think it's probably one of the most positive things that could happen because it's less likely to create, boundaries that people have to overcome in order to relate to one another. And I love that because when I was in high school, absolutely, you were labeled. You had to have a clique that you associated with. And I kind of was one of those people that I kind of bounced around, but I think I was the unique person in doing that. So I love that you're sharing that message because I think that's an important one. So what do you think is the purpose of life?
I think you have to
ask an atheist.
Yeah. That's good. I have a better answer than a religious person. I think you need to find things in life that make you happy. And then I think you need to orient your life around pursuing and maximizing those things. I think that when people think about like what makes them happy, the worst possible thing you can do, it's better to have a wrong answer than no answer. Because if you have no answer, then society is going to fill that in for you. And when you're in a culture where everybody wants to sell you something or tell you what to do or get you to, buy or join some group or whatever, it's very easy to get kind of lost in a sort of rat race. I know if there's anybody listening in their 30s, for millennials, there's a lot of people that made all the right steps. They did well in high school, they went to college, they got a good job, and now they're making, 70, 80, 90,000, maybe six figures now. And they're super miserable because they're not doing anything they like or love. And I think that's really sad. And that's actually really common in my age group where it's like, oh, well, what do you like to do or what do you enjoy? And it's like, oh, I don't know. I work a lot and, sometimes I watch Netflix and, I have all this money and nothing to do with it or no fun or no hobbies or whatever. So yeah, I think finding something that you really enjoy in life and then orienting your life around being able to do that is really important.
Do you know your answer is the closest to how I think than anybody else I've interviewed?
Well, cool.
I always say that the purpose of life is to find joy.
Huh?
And if you can find joy and orient your life around that path of finding joy, then you're always going to live a happy life. And usually you will end up finding yourself in very successful places, because when you're joyful, you attract positive energy.
Hopefully, yeah.
So, yay, thank you. I love that answer. What's a piece of advice that you were given that you've always remembered?
Man, I don't remember where I read it, but somebody a long time ago told me it was something along the line of like 30 minutes is a lot of time. Um, there is so much time in the day to do things, and we waste so much time doing things like on our phone and whatnot. If you schedule like 30 minutes a day to pick up a hobby or an activity, like in 1 year, you can be at like a 99th percentile proficiency. You can be really, really, really good at some particular thing if you set aside some time to it. So you don't have to be like ultra regimenting your schedule. Like at 9:30, I do this. At 9:42, I do this. At 9:56, right? But like having like, every 20 minutes I wake up and I read a book instead of reading my phone. I think making little changes like that, you can find there's a whole bunch of time in your day that you can find if you actually schedule it out.
God, that's such a great piece of advice. I hope all you kids are listening to this.
If I could give a life piece of advice to kids, it doesn't matter what I say because they'll never listen to it. Because I know that I've always said this, if I could go back in time and talk to myself and I knew that it was me from the future, I still wouldn't listen to it. Try harder in school. Oh my God. Just study or work a little bit more in school. There's no excuse, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smart kids, I think, that just don't study enough. They don't put enough effort in. And you don't realize how much you've messed up until you're until you're working a job. It's one of the reasons why I wish you could like make kids work jobs like for 1 year before college. So it's like, okay, well, if you don't do well in school or whatever, this is what the rest of your life could be like. You might be doing this thing that doesn't give you all the freedom and everything you want. So yeah, try hard in school.
It is so true. And I think for a lot of people that drop out of college, once they get into the work world, they decide to go back, because then they actually appreciate what learning is a wonderful opportunity, I always say.
For sure. There are things in life that mature you very quickly. And one of those things is when you have to get up, you have to go to a job that you don't want to, because if you don't, you can't pay your bills.
Right.
That experience like changes a person. And yeah, there's a really old quote, and every year I get older, it's I find it rings more true, and that's youth is wasted on the young.
That's so
because you don't really realize, what everything in life is until you're out of school, and it's like, man, there's so many things I would have done differently had I known.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my gosh, you're so wise for your young age. How old are you?
33.
33?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Tell me something that you used to believe but you don't anymore.
Something
I'm
that
sure there's a long list of things.
Absolutely. There is a lot. I'll be completely honest, because I've grown up a little bit different. It's really hard, depending on where you're at in life or what you're doing, to not get kind of like a superiority complex. One of the biggest changes that I've made to my own personal thoughts is, rather than seeing different like ways of functioning as lesser or worse, I just try to view it as different. And I think it lets me associate or relate to people in a lot more of a healthy way.
Yeah.
So I'm a very cold, kind of like factual, like this and that and that and that kind of person. And for a long time, especially in my early 20s, if I ran across more emotionally driven people, I'd be like, okay, well, you're a loser, you're dumb. Why can't you just think a little bit reasonably? But now I try to view people as like being a little bit different. Like, okay, well, this person thinks of things differently. I'm probably missing out on some aspects of life because I'm not as emotionally driven. But I see how this person does it, and I try to like engage with it in a better way than just thinking like, oh, I'm so much better than you.
That's awesome. A lot of the spiritual teachers teach that. They said to go through life with, to observe but not judge. Because as soon as you judge something, you have to attach a part of yourself to it. It's black or white, right or wrong. You're holding on to it. If you observe something and let it pass through you, then there's no obligation to you. So it's actually a very freeing way to go about life, I think.
For sure. And everybody has like probably something that you can learn from or take from that would benefit you in some way. Yeah.
No, that's so true. And to your point, you've changed so much in your way of thinking. How do you know that later in life you actually wouldn't finally adopt that way of thinking too? So you might be judging yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's simultaneously a good experience and a bad experience. But like every like 2 to 3 years, I'll look back on some stuff I believed and I'll be like, oh my God, I was so cringe. But I mean, I also, the biggest worry I have in life actually is that I would get to like 45 or something. And I'd look back and like, I believe every single thing I believed when I was 35, because I'd be worried that like, well, I wonder if I'm not growing or changing in a way that I should be. So
I absolutely think that would be an indicator of that.
Possibly, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
There's a lot of like an early, I hate saying this, but in school, especially, you hear a lot of things to your parents that are whatever. And then you get to high school and college and you realize a lot of what they said was really dumb and wrong. And then you get out of college and high school, and you're like, okay, actually, maybe they were correct on more things than I realized. But you kind of like need the learned experience to kind of connect to what they were saying sometimes. So it's, yeah.
It's so true. Thankfully, Arist often says now, "You were right again."
Yeah. Not that they're right on everything, though.
No.
Especially boomer parents. There's a lot of really dumb things they say. So,
It's so
it's a hit or
true.
miss thing,
It's so true.
which is why you got to learn through experience.
You got to learn through experience. It's absolutely right.
Mhm.
Tell me about a pressing issue that you think is super facing our planet that's bad.
I think the biggest issue on the planet right now is that we live in, I'm going to use the phrase, different epistemic realities. The way that people figure out like what's true or false is just totally different. And I think the scariest thing that you run into is when you hit a divide like this, you can't communicate anymore. And then the divides will grow bigger and bigger. I think that when you have a group of people together that have some level of disagreement, there's like a tension there that I think is good because it keeps everybody at least a little bit grounded. And when everybody separates because they can't talk to each other anymore, you totally lose that, and then both sides fly off into crazy directions, and it inhibits conversation. Oftentimes people ask about like, oh, the American political system, it's so messed up, Congress is broken and blah, blah, blah. I actually think our political system is really effective. I think it's like almost perfect in some ways. It's designed really well. And when people look at things like Congress and they go, okay, well, why isn't Congress passing any legislation if it works so well? Well, it's because historically we are ultra divided as a country. And I think Congress reflects that. We can't get any big legislation out of Congress because we genuinely have huge disagreements between half the population about the direction the country should take.
So what do you think is the answer?
Man, if I knew that, I would be living in an island somewhere as a trillionaire because I'd be the richest person in the world. I truly don't know the answer to that. There needs to be, I will say in one thing, I think I tweeted this out, go make more friends that are different than you politically, because God, people do not understand anything about other types of people, and it is really scary. There's an experience that people don't understand. I can talk about this through the lens of Tinder. When you have like a dating app in front of you, you can have like a 52 checklist thing for like, okay, I only want a woman that's like this and that and that and that and that and that and that and that, or I only want a man that's like this or that, and then you swipe left on everything. You try to find the perfect match. But the reality is you can get along with way more people than you realize. And the perfect person for you might not hit like even half the boxes that you want to check. The best example of this is a work environment and school. When you're in school, you're thrown into a class with 10, 20, 30 people. You don't know any of these people. There's no like 55 dimensions of person. Yeah, but somehow most people will make friends, and you'll even make a best friend or a good friend, and there's no crazy matching or anything. Or coworkers, right? Coworkers are always friends with each other. Generally, you'll get along with your coworkers, hopefully. So yeah, like having people from different backgrounds with different experiences, I think is really important. So that when you hear an idea that's different than yours, you're not instantly thinking that's like the worst type of person in the world, but you have a little bit more of a foundation to like, okay, I super disagree with you, but like I understand you're coming from this point of view.
I so agree. It's funny because me and my girlfriends, we do this thing because I'm single. And so we write a letter to God about the person that we want to attract into our life.
Oh boy, okay.
And you're supposed to be really detail oriented. So he kind of wrote it all down. But the one thing I did not put is political affiliation. And even though I am a Democrat and pretty liberal, I like to be around people that have differing points of view. Obviously, I live in Orange County because I feel like it keeps you honest. And I want to always have discussions, and I always want to grow, and I always want to figure out how to be the best I can be. And I think, to your point, if you surround yourself with people that are all like-minded with you, that think exactly the same way, you might not have that opportunity to grow as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Unless you watch Stephen.
Sure.
Destiny.
Yeah.
What's a goal you've yet to reach?
There are certain people that I want to talk to that I haven't quite gotten to yet. I think the two big ones are probably Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. So maybe someday we'll see.
Oh, wow. Yeah. My son's a big Ben Shapiro fan too.
Is he?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Stephen, you're a recent newlywed. I saw pictures of your beautiful wife, Melina, who's also a Twitch streamer. And yet you've also been very forthcoming about the fact that you guys have an open marriage. So what does that mean to you?
Without getting too detailed, we both enjoy doing things a lot, and doing things with other people is a lot of fun too. And the idea of like being locked down and not getting to experience things with other people is something that neither of us are too keen on. So that's the PG answer, I guess. Yeah.
But then why get married?
Because we love each other very much.
But what does marriage mean to you?
Well, it means she can get a green card and become a U.S. citizen. But really, she's a Swedish person, and the only way that we can live together is if she's a U.S. citizen, or if I move to Sweden and become a Swedish citizen. So, yeah. Right. Otherwise, like marriage is not like a big. Like, I hope I spend the rest of my life with her. Like, we both want that. But the idea of marriage is not something I'm like that huge on. But like the legal process is really important for everything. So.
Well, I appreciate the honesty in that answer. You've talked openly also about being bisexual. Many people, I mean, I think about how sometimes I worry about exposing too much about myself because there can be such a backlash of people when you're in the public eye. Was that difficult of a decision for you to make, to talk so openly about your sexual choices?
I don't want to make it seem like it's not a difficult thing. For most people, I think it would be. I am a pretty unique person in that for whatever reason, how I was raised or how whatever came up, I just super don't care about other people's opinions about my life. So no, for me, it wasn't that difficult. And also I think it's nice to have more representation of different types of people that are exhibiting different like sexual orientations, I guess. I think everything is cool and anybody can do what they want, but like typically when you think of like gay or bisexual orientation, it's usually like a very specific type of thing that's like stereotyped really heavily. So if I can give a little bit of representation that's not quite like that, I think that's a cool thing.
I think it's a cool thing. And I think that that's an area that we still have a lot of room for growth, right?
Potentially,
that's still an area that I feel like people really want to put people into pockets, and as opposed to just allowing people just to be who they are. And who cares about what people's sexual, I don't give a crap about what people do. That's their own business. But I kudos to you for being so open and helping us lead in that direction.
Sure.
I think about it though, because you spend so much time in front of the camera and people know so much about your life. Do you get worried? I mean, do you worry about like stalkers or your personal health? Safety?
It kind of is what it is. I mean, I do what I can, but I mean, if something happens, it happens. There's not much. It's kind of hard I try not to worry about things that I can't do much about.
Right.
So, yeah, if something happens, that would suck, but hopefully not. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. Being a pioneer in the industry, if there was somebody that was interested in getting onto Twitch and being a streamer, what advice would you have for them?
There's kind of like there's a boilerplate question that I respond to with everything. There's two types of people. It's one, it will be Twitch streamers, and then other people will be like entrepreneurs. And because people will even like, oh, I want to start this business. What do you think about this? My response is always the exact same. And it's, if I were to ask you, what are you offering that somebody would go to you before anybody else for? What is that thing? You should know that instantly. Like for the type of content that I do, I know what I excel at. Like if you want somebody that can like debate and argue with people and be entertaining, like in the way that I do it, I'm very unique there. Not many people can do it in the way that I do. So I know that. If you're like starting a business and you want to sell like a certain food, or you want to like offer a certain service, or if you want to be a streamer and you want to stream a certain thing, you should know immediately, like, well, why are people going to watch me or buy from me or associate with me over a competitor? And whatever that answer is, you have to know it, and then you have to play into it, and then you have to build around that basically. But it's a really difficult thing because it's not just like can I learn to play piano? It's can I be competitive in a space against other people that are all vying for a very limited amount of attention?
And yet when I look at Twitch and I see some of the people, especially the kind of the real life people, I mean, they're literally, and Melina's one of them, right? She just kind of goes about her day and going to the store, I'm eating my lunch, I'm eating my breakfast. It would have been hard if you would have asked those people, what is it that's your point of unique differentiation? Because honestly, they're not that unique, right? It's kind of like, but it's something about their character or something about their personality or something about their look that is inspiring. And sometimes it might be hard for a person to know if they have the right chemistry or charisma or whatever to make it in an online platform like that.
Some people are just lucky and they'll have it without thinking about it much. This is why I think oftentimes the worst people to ask about how to become successful are successful people, because they're going to splurge and tell you a whole bunch of stuff that's actually not really important at all. But they think it is, but they don't realize that they made it for other reasons. So yeah, some people just have like very charismatic, magnetic personalities that people are attracted to, and they can stream and get lucky and do it. But I think if you're that kind of person, I think you'll have an inkling of it already. You'll kind of know. Like I kind of knew before I got into streaming, like, I know I'm a funny person. I can tell jokes to a lot of people. I make a lot of people laugh. Like, I kind of already knew that a little bit. When people are emailing me saying like, I'm a very introverted, shy person and I want to get into streaming, it's like, okay, you have a lot of work to do to overcome that. And yeah.
You know, I think you got to get better lighting for your show because after watching it, you are so much more handsome in real life.
Okay.
I mean,
my lighting is awesome.
Yes,
okay. It's very colorful. Okay. I might not do all the makeup and everything, but my lighting is perfectly fine. Okay.
Okay. Just saying. What can we expect to hear or see from Steven next? What do you got coming up?
Well, the House races are coming up soon. So we'll be covering all the political stuff related to that. For big events, I don't think I have anything maybe on the horizon in April. I might be doing a pretty crazy debate against some well-known, I'll say, Nazi-adjacent people. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah.
Do you have any candidates that are especially interesting to you or people you're getting excited about?
No, not right now. I deliberately, you can call it lazy, maybe some people would, but like I don't follow any of the stuff before like the races start. The whole like obsession with like a year ahead, like who's gonna run, and like I super don't care. Like when people start running, when people start running, that's usually when I'll start looking at okay, well, who's saying what policies are people advocating for, and who's gonna win in what races? Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. It's been so awesome having you here. You're such a wonderful person, so much more funny and conversational than Eris told me you'd be. No, just kidding.
Okay.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much, Steven, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yay.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Delphine Circle. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free and it will help us keep these incredible interviews coming your way. Here are 2 other episodes you may enjoy. I'm Delphine. Welcome to my circle.